The hospital corridor had gone unnaturally silent when the 20th doctor stepped out of the operating room and slowly shook his head. His gloves were stained, his eyes tired, and his voice barely above a whisper. "We're running out of options." Inside the room, the wife of the nation's most feared general lay gripping the sheets, her breath shallow, her body exhausted after 12 hours of labor that refused to end. 2 heartbeats fluttered on the monitor, fragile, fading. Outside, the general stood perfectly still, his uniform immaculate, his face carved from stone. Men had seen him command armies without blinking, but now his hands trembled as he pressed them together, praying in silence for 2 lives he had never even held. General Armin Rahman was a man known for control. He controlled battlefields, negotiations, even his own emotions. But nothing in his decades of service had prepared him for the helplessness of watching his wife, Sarah, suffer. She was strong, stronger than anyone gave her credit for, but the twins were positioned dangerously. Complications had stacked upon complications. Specialists were flown in, senior surgeons argued in hushed, urgent tones. Every possible protocol had been attempted. Still, the babies would not come. With every passing minute, the risk grew darker. Sarah's face was pale, her lips dry, but her eyes searched the room desperately. "Armin," she whispered when he was allowed to step in briefly. "Please, don't let them give up." The general took her hand, pressing his forehead to it. "They won't," he said firmly, though fear cracked his voice. "And neither will I." When he stepped back into the hallway, he demanded answers, not with threats, but with the quiet authority of a man who had learned that shouting never saved lives. The doctors could only offer honesty. "Sir," the head obstetrician said, "we've reached the edge of what we know how to do." That was when a young nurse hesitated near the doorway. Her name was Aisha Malik, and she had only been working at the hospital for 6 months. She was not a specialist. She was not famous. Her uniform was plain, her badge unremarkable. But her eyes were sharp, focused, and troubled by what she had been hearing for the past hour. Aisha had grown up in a remote village where doctors were rare and childbirth was often guided by experience passed down through generations. Her mother had been a midwife who believed in listening, to the mother, to the baby, to the body itself. Aisha had gone on to train formally, absorbing modern medicine with respect, but she never forgot the old lessons. She took a breath and stepped forward. "Sir," she said softly, addressing the general and the gathered doctors. Every head turned, some surprised, some annoyed. "There is something we haven't tried." The room stiffened. The lead surgeon frowned. "Nurse, this is not the time," but the general raised a hand. He looked at Aisha, really looked at her, and saw not arrogance but conviction. "Say it," he ordered calmly. Aisha swallowed. "The twins aren't responding because the mother is exhausted and terrified. Her body is fighting the process. Where I come from, in cases like this, we change the environment. We slow everything down. We let the mother regain control. I believe we can help them turn naturally if we stop forcing and start listening." A murmur rippled through the room. Some doctors shook their heads. Others exchanged uncertain glances. "That's not in any medical guideline," someone muttered. The general's gaze never left Aisha. "If you're wrong," he said quietly, "I lose my wife and my children." Aisha met his eyes, her voice steady despite the weight of his words. "And if we do nothing, sir," she replied, "you will lose them anyway." Silence fell. Again, heavier than before. Finally, the head obstetrician exhaled slowly. "We are out of options," he admitted. "Prepare the room. We'll try." Inside the operating room, the lights were dimmed. The constant beeping was lowered to a gentle rhythm. Aisha knelt beside Sarah, speaking softly to her, not as a patient but as a woman. She guided her breathing, grounding her through the pain, reminding her that her body was not failing her, it was just afraid. She adjusted Sarah's position carefully, using techniques many in the room had only read about, never practiced. The doctors watched closely, skepticism slowly giving way to cautious hope. Minutes passed. Then one of the monitors shifted. "Heartbeat stabilizing," a doctor whispered. Sarah gasped, not in pain this time, but in surprise. "Something's changing," she cried. Sweat poured down her face, but her eyes were clear now, focused. Aisha nodded encouragingly. "That's it," she said. "Trust yourself." Another contraction came, stronger, purposeful. The room held its breath. The first cry shattered the silence like a miracle. A tiny, furious wail filled the room, and for a moment no one moved, as if afraid it wasn't real. Then the second cry followed, weaker but unmistakably alive. Doctors sprang into action, laughter mixing with disbelief. Both babies are breathing, someone announced. Tears streamed freely now. Sarah collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing with relief as Aisha placed the twins briefly against her chest. "You did it," Aisha whispered. "All of you did." When the general was told, his knees nearly gave out. He walked into the room slowly, as if approaching something sacred. The sight of his wife smiling through tears, 2 tiny lives safe in her arms, broke the last of his composure. He knelt beside the bed, pressing his face into the blanket, shoulders shaking. Soldiers outside later said it was the first time they had ever seen their commander cry. The hospital buzzed for days with the story. 20 doctors, years of experience, advanced technology, and it was a new nurse who changed everything. But Aisha never claimed credit. When reporters tried to speak to her, she quietly returned to her duties. "I didn't do the impossible," she said simply. "I just listened." Before leaving the hospital with his family, the general asked to see her one last time. He stood before Aisha, no ranks, no titles, just a grateful father. "You saved my family," he said. "Tell me how I can repay you." Aisha shook her head. "By remembering," she replied. "That sometimes the smallest voice carries the answer." As the twins were carried into the sunlight for the first time, the general understood something he had never learned on any battlefield. True strength wasn't always loud. Sometimes, it walked quietly into a room, trusted its heart, and changed everything. And that lesson, born in pain and hope, would guide him for the rest of his life.